Yesterday, we got interesting news out of the Senate there as all senators came together to pass an extension of the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program. Remember, that's the program there to keep businesses' payrolls stocked with their employees, at least in the interim here. And for more on that development, I want to bring in Yahoo Finance's Cheung, who has more details there. Brian?
Well, Zach, nothing like a little midnight action from the U.S. Senate. As you mentioned, they did pass by unanimous consent a bill that would extend the Paycheck Protection Program applications at least through August 8th. Keep in mind, there's still $130 billion in funding still available. So far, the Small Business Administration has approved almost 4.9 million loans totaling $520.6 billion. But again, over $100 billion still available. That would have expired if the Congress did not extend that timeline. But again, last night, the Senate ultimately passing that. This would still need to get signed by the White House to become law. So it's not necessarily across the finish line yet, but again, passed by unanimous consent. So there shouldn't be a reason why Republicans would want to stop this. If anyone's wondering why the August 8th deadline, that is because that is the end of the Senate's next scheduled working block. The idea here is to keep this as a small patch until Congress can ultimately pass this phase 4 negotiation, which U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said that Treasury on their end is still working on for right now. So questions on what happens next with the PPP program as those phase 4 negotiations do undergo, things like modifying the PPP program. So it seems like the amount of money is not a concern. Keep in mind, because there's over $100 billion still in the pot, the question is, how can they better target it? Senate Democrats have a proposal through what they call the P4 bill, which would target businesses with less than 100 employees and also self-employed people. It would actually target only those that have realized a 50% or more revenue loss under the COVID-19 crisis and offer as much as, get this, 250% of monthly payroll costs and also a quicker loan forgiveness mechanism. So all that in view as those phase 4 negotiations do kick off. But again, seems like there should be this fix for that August extension for the PPP.
And it's also interesting to think about this program, too, in the way that it was on the brink when we think about the political favorability of it. When we saw big corporations tapping this funding, a lot of people unhappy with that. Very shaky grounds PPP was trading on before, but now it seems to be one of those things that's catching steam again here, as it does seem effective in helping businesses in real terms.
Well, what you were talking about, Zach, is probably the idea that Shake Shack and the likes of these other large restaurant corporations ultimately getting PPP loans, which a lot of them ultimately ended up returning. There was definitely some concern that the PPP design was too loose in the way that it was targeting it. But on the other hand of things, you could argue that because they needed to pass this legislation quickly, there were going to be some loose parts of the bill which would have allowed for things like that to happen. So the idea here is now that Congress hopefully has a little bit more time to look back and retroactively say, hey, we can make this fix and better target these types of businesses, because as we know, it really is those small Main Street businesses, not these Shake Shacks of the world, that need help. That's why this Democrat proposal, for example, through the P4 bill, would target specifically companies with less than 100 employees and those that have had more than 50% revenue loss, which, as we know, is a lot of those businesses on our streets. So that's something that's going to be in focus. But again, as you mentioned, senators and House members really trying to be careful here about the details as they craft this legislation together.
Hey, investors, Zack Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.